With more than 100 years of experience between the four of them, covering Minnesota high school athletics, the Minnesota Sun newspaper's sports editors bring you Sun on Sports.
Hey, I guess we've been renewed. Who'd have thought?
We're back on.
Hi, welcome back to Sun on Sports. I'm Mike Shaughnessy. This is our weekly, semi-weekly, monthly, whatever, review of high school sports in the Sun newspaper's coverage area. I'm joined as usual by my colleagues John Sherman, Greg Kleven, and Nick Clark. And this week we're starting out with a discussion of the conference shuffling that's proposed for the 2010-2011 school year. And on Tuesday of this week, the Minnesota State High School League pulled out its rubber stamp and sent the four Classic Lake Conference orphans to the Lake Conference. Nick, you attended the meeting yesterday where this took place. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I can. I guess we'd prefer to be talking about games and practices and seasons coming up, but this has kind of been the dominant story in the news for going on a year now. Yeah, it's interesting. As fast as that stamp went down, the Lake Conference officials that were inside the high school league meeting yesterday got out before it fell because they wanted nothing to do with it. None of them got up and spoke. Essentially what happened was the formality or the finalization, however you want to put it, of the high school league going through and following a recommendation that was put forth by a committee to move the four remaining Classic Lake schools, Wayzata, Edina, Hopkins, and Minnetonka, into the Lake Conference. That decision turned the Lake Conference into, I believe, a 14-team conference now, and that could last all of a week. There's a lot of rumors going around that Lake Conference schools are ready to bolt and form their own conference because they wanted nothing to do with this. They were okay with taking on two of the schools with hopes that the other two would be sent to the Northwest Suburban. Northwest Suburban Conference played its cards perfectly. They didn't want any of those four schools, so they took Armstrong, the school that Classic Lake Conference originally kind of kicked out, and from there basically said, well, you didn't want to be with Armstrong in the first place, why would you want to be with him now? Wayzata and Hopkins were the two schools that did appeal this decision. Both appeals were rejected. Dan Johnson, Hopkins athletic director, seemed okay with it. However, Wayzata athletic director Jamie Sherwood did voice some pretty direct concern and disappointment with the decision. However, in the end, he's obviously going, as a former high school league, Minnesota State High School League board president, he's going to accept the decision and not pout too much. But you could see it yesterday. He wasn't happy with it, and it was quite obvious that the Lake Conference officials that were at the meeting weren't happy either. They didn't even stick around until that meeting was adjourned. They were all gone before the gavel came down.
And Nick, as you alluded to, the fact that the high school league's action yesterday by no means is the end of this. Greg, this has some, at least as has been rumored, some pretty serious ramifications for schools such as Eden Prairie.
Right, Eden Prairie they feel like they're sort of out on the limb. I don't think they mind playing having the four Classic Lake schools moved in, but Mike Granda said from the start, the athletic activities director at Eden Prairie, that they're going to be part of the Lake Conference no matter what. Well, the problem is they might be one of 5 schools, because from my sources say that Bloomington, Kennedy, and Jefferson definitely want to join the Dakota County Conference's schools and play there in a year from now. They feel it'll be a better competitive fit than playing against Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Wayzata, the big boys and stuff. Because Kennedy and Jefferson have been the 2 smallest enrollment schools in the Lake Conference now for about the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of people don't realize that. At one time, Bloomington had 3 schools and stuff. But I was told by somebody to check with that individual in about a week or 2, and there might, maybe a couple of weeks, and there might be something going as far as that new conference, because they have to, if they're going to leave the Lake Conference, which is those Dakota County schools. They have to file a petition by October 1st.
Right, if they want to join a new conference by the 2010 to 2011 school year.
Right. I would personally, I think that Kennedy and Jefferson would be a better fit with perhaps like the Classic Suburban, but Classic Suburban doesn't want to. The trouble is some of these conferences are sitting just fine with the number of schools. They don't want to add another 2-3 schools, and then they have to start thinking about going to divisions stuff. So it'll be interesting. I wrote in a column a couple weeks ago, I said, nobody's going to be happy with the final outcome. You can't please everybody. It's just that, getting back to Eden Prairie, I don't know how Eden Prairie will probably be with those 4 Classic Lake, but I think there's going to have to be a couple of more schools that will be thrown in that mix. And unfortunately, Kennedy and Jefferson might be the swing schools on that, but that's all I know.
It seems like a lot of what it'll depend on is whether the Dakota County schools, who have already expressed interest in forming their own conference, want to take the 2 Bloomington schools with them.
Right.
John, you cover 3 of the 4 orphaned Classic Lake Conference schools. They have been dealing with the reality and the scheduling hassles of being in a 5-team conference for a long time. And despite the reassignment to the lake, it looks extremely likely that they may continue to be in a 5-team conference. What do you think should have been done?
Mike, you've gone the extra mile today. You've used the word orphan and the word Edina in the same sentence. That's a little bit hard to do. I'd like to go over what I think should happen, and then I'd like to go over what I think will happen. What should happen, what should have already happened with these people up at the State High School League. Hopkins and Wayzata should have been placed in the Northwest Suburban Conference. It's obvious, similar school size, similar geography. They want to be there. Put them in with schools like Blaine and Anoka, Coon Rapids. That would be a perfect match. Champlain Park, another one. They're all about the same size. They're all up on that end of town. Put the other Classic Lake schools, Edina and Minnetonka, in with the lake schools, and you're all set there. You've got a 12-team conference, which is perfect for a lot of sports. It'll help with scheduling. Right now, what we have is a situation where these people are having to find 18 non-conference games in some sports, which is ridiculous. I think the Dakota County schools will eventually form their own conference. They'll add Prior Lake or Farmington or maybe both, and they'll have a conference. They'll be freestanding, and they'll all be the same type of schools in that conference. I think that's what's eventually going to happen. So that's what should have happened. Now here's my prediction for what will happen.
Stay tuned for more Sun on Sports, your insider's guide to Minnesota high school athletics. For the scores and more, tune in daily to mnsun.com/sports. And tune in every Saturday morning to Sun on Sports on AM 950, the voice of Minnesota.